Welcome everybody to our career development workshop event on the topic of interviewing the employer. It is hosted by us, the Canadian Multicultural Lead Organization for Mentoring and Training, featuring Tara Rhodes, an amazing life and leadership coach. We're so excited to have Tara here this evening of a Wednesday, November 3rd, 2021. And just so everybody knows, we are recording this workshop so that we can post it to our YouTube channel, and you can always tune in afterwards to catch the replay. Before we begin, I will hand it over to my colleague L.E.A.D to read our land acknowledgement.
Yes, thank you, Valerie, and welcome everyone. We hope this session is very helpful and useful to you. So I'll get started with the land acknowledgement. As treaties people on Turtle Island, we are obligated to uphold treaties made from a long time ago. Where I am situated, I would like to acknowledge the traditional territories of the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation, the Mississauga peoples, and the treaty territory of the Chippewas of Georgina Island First Nation. I also want to thank the First Peoples for the ongoing teaching of how we are to learn on the land and from the land in partnership with each other, the animals, and the plants.
Thank you, L.E.A.D for reading our land acknowledgement. And the agenda of the evening goes like so. So we will inform everybody about the LEAD org. We'll share the ground rules. We'll introduce our speaker, Tara Rhodes. And we'll have our main event. We'll give a bit of time on the clock to fill out our post-workshop feedback form. And we'll give information about our upcoming events. We'll hope to see you there. All right, so back to L.E.A.D for all about our organization.
Yes. Yes, so we are the LEAD organization. If you're new to our events, we are a charitable nonprofit community organization here in the GTA, and our main goal is to provide mentoring and training to youth and adults by assisting them in different areas through, programs, seminars, workshops like what we're doing currently, conferences, meetings, and by also helping them access pertinent support groups and resources within the community. And our whole mission is honestly to give individuals from youth to seniors the support that they need to develop strategies and tools so they can write their own success stories.
Amazing, thank you, L.E.A.D. Okay, so we have a few ground rules to engage this evening. Number 1 is to please be respectful. 2, be authentic. 3, be open to learning. And 4, be present. So if possible, we would love to see some of you on camera. If not, please be aware that and present during the time we're together. And be helpful. We will be having a breakout room session later on where you'll get to meet each other and help each other out to learn. And take action. This will be an interactive event, so Tara will be available to answer your queries. All right, so all about Tara. I'll hand it over to L.E.A.D to introduce our amazing speaker of the evening.
Thanks, Valerie. Yes, as we mentioned, Tara Rhodes is leading today's session. So I'll just be doing a quick introduction of her. So Tara is a certified life and leadership coach and speaker and award-winning facilitator and trainer. She's very dedicated to helping people gain clarity and confidence to advocate for the lives that they want to live, and also helping them to develop healthy habits to make that a reality. She firmly believes that life is too short to live a life that makes you unhappy, and is on a mission to help our clients take control of their lives so they can share their unique gifts with the world. She's a wife and a mom to 2 lovely boys, and she actively practices what she preaches to maintain a healthy balance and presence in her everyday. And you can find out more about her on our website, www.tararoads.ca. Welcome, Tara.
Thank you. Oh, thank you for the claps. Hello, everybody, and welcome. Thank you for that introduction. I am so excited to be here. I wish I had taken advantage of more of these programs when I was just starting my career. And so thank you for showing up. Thank you for investing in yourself. These go a long way. And my intention today is to help you with your growth, wherever that is. I know we're all on our different journeys and our different paths. So whatever it is that will help you take your next step, that is what I'm interested in. So when Valerie is talking about presence, 100%. You came here, you're here for 90 minutes. So take what you need from this session. I am dedicated to people living their best life, to use Oprah's language. But mainly, it really is about plotting out where you want to go. I, as mentioned, I'm a leadership coach, and I deal with a lot of people who, when I ask them what they want, they do not know the answer to that question. And so when you do not know the answer to that question, a lot of what we're talking about today becomes a lot more difficult. So I want to start going down this path, exploring how do we talk to our employers? How do we talk to people who could potentially be leading our career in a way that feels more grounded and clear? And so that's what I'm going to, hopefully you'll be able to take some of that away today, and some tips and tricks for what that looks like for you as you are plotting out your next steps. So I love all the ground rules. I would love to see some of your faces. If you cannot put your camera on, some reactions would be great. Use the chat. I am all about having, thank you, Hearth. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. Hello. Use the chat. I'm all about a parking lot. So if you think of a question and you just want to put it in the chat that we can get to later, I will be making space for questions. That is really great. If you just want to say, yes, I fully agree with that, I did that too, let us know in the chat. That is super awesome when you do. And this is interactive, so I'm going to be asking questions throughout. So I want to hear your answers, whether or not that's out loud. You can unmute yourself at those points, or use the chat box for your answer. We want to hear from you. There's a lot of learning in here. There's a lot of people here. And so I'm not the only expert. I'm sure you are all experts in your own right. So do not hide what you've got to share with the group. All right, so every time I start off a session, I like to do what's called a check-in. So it's 6:00 p.m. I'm sure we've come from somewhere. Maybe you're eating. There's a lot going on. We are constantly on some type of video platform on our meetings. And so I always like to do a check-in. If you lead teams, or if you are having meetings like this with many people, it's actually a really great tool for everybody to get present to what we are doing right now, because people are going from call to call. So the check-in, it's about getting present. And the question that I have today for you is, what are 2 words for describing how you are right now? I must say I am hungry, but super excited. Put it in the chat. What are your 2 words that you are identifying with right now? Curious and tired. Yes, I feel that. Thank you for sharing. Calm and grounded. Beautiful, beautiful. Keep them coming, keep them coming. A doer and hungry. Yes, tired and excited. Is that a question mark? Awesome. Enthused and tired. Yeah, chilled and curious. Love the word curious. Tired, interested. You know what I love about this check-in is the paradox of words. And it really does showcase that we can be feeling things that feel opposite a lot of the time, but it's here. So bring it in the room. Fabulous. Tired and peaceful. Oh, I love that. I feel like I want to go in a hammock. Excited and open. Great. Happy to have you here. Keep them coming, keep them coming. So this is something that you can easily do if you're on these calls a lot, if you feel like you're context switching a lot. Starting a call with something like this can be really helpful, and allows you to get grounded, because there's a lot going on, and we have a lot going on. And I think if anyone has learned anything over the last year and a bit, or a year and a half and a bit, is that we need time to slow down. So use this time to get grounded for what you need. And yeah, let's dive in. Thank you for sharing. All right, I'm going to share a little bit about my story. You got the tail end of my story in my introduction bio, but I thought it would be really helpful just for you to hear a little bit about my journey and how I got to where I am and some of the nuggets that I've taken away from my own journey. So I was born here in Toronto, raised in Scarborough. For all of you who know Malvern, that is where I grew up the majority of my life. And I think that, while I came from two immigrant parents, my parents were from the Caribbean. And so my upbringing was very much about hard work. My parents worked very hard. Building community out of nothing, because my parents had no one. They had to make their own community here, which in the 80s in Toronto, that was like really interesting. And that was a really big thing for me, is knowing that people were there. I always felt supported, which really contributed to me feeling very confident on my road. What I will say is one parent was not as educated as the other. So I had my mom, she went to nursing school in England and then came here. She went when she was 16 years old. And my dad left when he was a teenager as well and came to the United States. And so work ethic strong, but I think what really differentiated my journey was that I saw possibilities. So because my mom was a nurse and she worked in hospitals, I saw doctors, I saw surgeons, I saw a lot of people that we would consider professionals. And I saw that side, even though that was not how I was necessarily raised. It was something that always just brought to my attention, oh, that's how other people live. That's really interesting. And so that was instilled in me from when I was really young. So when I was 10, so keep going, and my dad was diagnosed with a terminal illness. And so at that time I had to grow up really quickly, or at least I felt that way. Nobody told me that I had to, but I felt like I had. And so it was a really hard time. I felt like I had to become tough and just deal and not really talk about my feelings, not being able to do that. So the growth in that part for me is that it's actually one of my largest strengths right now, is being able to take control of a situation, being able to be organized, be able to see the big picture. I'm a very big picture thinker. I'm a systems thinker. And it comes from that time. And if you know anything about therapy or just like attachment theory, the things that happen to us between generally 8 to 13 years old have some of the biggest imprints on our life and how we view the world. So if you have not thought about maybe some of those times in your life and how you want to bring that into the interview, I highly suggest you think about that, because these are the times that really impact what our personalities will be and what we value as humans. So went to school, dealing with all this stuff. And when I was 18, right after I graduated, my mom took us on a trip. We went to England. It was my first outside of North America experience. And I was just like, how do I do this and get paid? Basically, I just wanted to learn how to travel and get paid. And I was just like, okay, so that's what I'm going to do for school, because I really had no idea what I wanted to do for school. I just knew I had to go. That was kind of, I have to figure out what education I'm doing. And I decided that I was going to do European and Russian studies, which sounds ridiculous when you think about it sometimes, because a lot of people would say, oh, that's not a practical thing to do. If those of you who are into it, it is fully practical. Do what you love. But at the time, it was just like, oh, well, I can travel for my third year, so that's what I'm going to do. And then when I went to a university career fair, I looked into, actually, there's an international business program that does the exact same thing. And I was like, oh, business is more practical. I will do that. I went to Carleton University and was able to travel. That's where I really caught the bug. So my program, international business, I was able to live in Chile for a year in my third year of university. And I fell in love with travel even more, learning Spanish, speaking Spanish, being able to do that. But in that time for me was being a minority, actually, because when I grew up, everything was like Toronto. It's like you see people who look like you or that are different all the time. And when I moved to Ottawa, or then I went to Carleton University, and then I went to Chile, same thing. It was like, I'm not only a minority, I became a token minority at some point, because everybody was so fascinated by the way that I looked, which impacts how I look at now, I would say, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging work, which I think is really extremely important. So I kept going, and I actually lived in Korea for, excuse me, 6 months. I had a marketing internship after school. I was really interested in finding out about marketing. I wanted to be an event planner. And it's really like, I didn't think through how that would really affect what I wanted to do. I just knew that I really liked bringing people together and what does that look like. And so when I got back from Korea, I went to an event because somebody told me networking was what you need to do. So yay, networking, great. I'll go to this event. It's talking about event planning. And this speaker was talking about the internet. So I'm a little bit older here. So this is a very like getting into what internet marketing was. It was still like a very new thing. We were talking about news websites, kind of like what Yahoo used to be, and newsletters. That was basically like how people could market, right? And ads on those sites. And I had no idea about it. I was fully intrigued and just like, how do I find out more? And I tapped her on the shoulder after her presentation and I said, I'd love to take you for a coffee. Can you tell me more about what you do? And she said, yes. We went for a coffee, and I showed up with my best self, my best smile, and asked really great questions. And 2 months later, she called me to be an intern at her company. And that is how I got my foot in the door. So another tip, you're always on, no matter what is going on. There is an opportunity potentially for where you want to go and find out information for where you want to be. It's not to say that she was going to be my boss potentially, but she's had me in mind, which is really great. So worked there for about a year, got a lot of knowledge. And then I dove into more digital media companies. So my background's in digital media companies. I work a lot in client success. And I was lucky enough to, after that job, work at a company that just valued people. I am really lucky to have my first, outside of an internship role, experience with a CEO that cared, that would call in, that would check into their offices, that would talk about what do you want to know, have calls every month asking about that. So when I'm about to share all of this information with you, I have very high standards about what a workplace can be, because pretty much every single workplace after that, except for now, was not that experience. And it will stunt your career growth if you do not take it into account that the manager that you have or the organizational culture that you're about to go in will affect how far you can go. So I want to prepare you for that. I know a lot of people do not have the high performance team experience that I had in my first job. And so it's really important that these questions that I'm about to take you through, all of that you take into account, what is it that's valuable to you so that you can make sure that you thrive in the environments that you're moving forward. So went into coaching because I was having a really bad experience actually, and I was looking for a way out. I went through middle management coach training at my organization, and I asked her for a coffee because I was like, what is this thing? I'm so intrigued about training and facilitation and how you're doing this. And it really sparked something in me. I asked her for a coffee. She told me she did coaching. I did all my research. I ended up going to coaching school, and that is now what I do. And I was headhunted. So my job right now is I'm a leadership facilitator and trainer. I love what I do. I do not take any of those experiences for granted, but what I do want to share about all of that is that everything that you do points to something in your story that can be really valuable for this journey that you're on. And so I never want to say take any of those. Like if you want to take a path without having a North Star, that's okay too. There's a lot that you can, learn from all of these experiences. And the more that you can be clear about what your experiences have taught you, what does that look like? How am I going to explain it? What is the value that I bring? You'll be able to tell a more cohesive story to anyone that you are having an interview with. So that's a lot, but I wanted to share that because especially too, if you have any questions, like you connect with me on LinkedIn or reach out to me, I would be happy to talk further about that if that's interesting to you. All right, let's dive in because I am boring. So here we go. What are you, let me share my screen and then we can go through so you can take a look here. What I would love to hear from the group in the chat box or even out loud is fine. What are you excited to learn about today? What are you hoping to hear about? can't see your name, but I see someone's hand up.
Peter?
Yeah, just I guess some ideas around how to go into interviews with confidence about being able to negotiate, or some of those ground rules.
Okay, great. Great question. Confidence. Yep. What
We
else?
have a lot of stuff in the chat as well.
Yeah, can you share?
So the first comment is how to make interviews more conversational.
Yes. Yes, we will go through that.
Yes. Another says how to identify red flags in employers. And then another comment is good questions to ask employers.
Yes.
The next one is how to ask the right questions during an interview. And then what to ask employers and how to weave them into the conversations.
Okay. Behind. All right. Wow. We are going to get all of that in. That is the focus of today. And feel free to take notes. Whatever works for you is completely fine. So as I mentioned, this is all about careers. Nothing wrong with finding jobs to fill the gap. If there's some place that you're in and you just really need to find something, that's okay. I'm focused on long-term. So I want to find those threads that we're going into that's not just, okay, now I want to land here, now I want to land there. This is all about thinking longer. What does this look like for me? How does this experience impact this experience? What do I want to get out of the future? So again, take what you need. The three lenses that I will focus on here are generally organization, team, and manager. So those are the three that I will focus on. Of course, you are one of those lenses too, which we will cover. But those are the three that I think about when I'm thinking about an organization and different levels and how they impact us. So let me just click on here. Don't overlook the possibility of gaining critical insight into your next boss's style and values. It is really important because, oh my goodness. Your manager and your peers significantly impact what your working experience will look like. This is part of evaluating whether or not you will be set up to succeed. This is a two-way street. I know a lot of the times it feels like the people that we're getting interviews with, the organizations we're getting to with, is like, oh yes, just so grateful to be here, which yes, you should be. Gratitude is a fabulous practice to be a part of. And you cannot rise above any organization's culture. You will not rise above any other organization's culture. It's such an important point because we think that we can change the world a lot of the time, that we can change people, and unfortunately we can't. So you need to be able to evaluate whether or not the environment that you're about to step into is setting you up to succeed. Proving your worth without putting any emphasis on the other party is exhausting. It's exhausting. And so the more that you can start to look at this from, this is a two-way conversation, as somebody said in the chat, that's exactly where we want you to be. Having the right environment is key to your success. So I want to ask the group, what does having the right environment mean to you? When I say that, what do you think of? Chat or out loud is fine.
We have some comments in the chat. Collaborative team environment.
Yes.
Another one says mutual respect. Another person says flexibility, understanding, and productive, fulfilling role.
Yes. So important.
Yes. There's a lot more to.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a good start. Keep them coming. It's so important because when you say this to me as a coach, I'm listening for values. So if you're to say to me a collaborative team environment, my guess is that you get a lot of energy working with others, for example. When you know what your value system is, you're able to identify some of those traits that are, what is that right environment? What is necessary for me to succeed, which we're going to dive into. What I love about what's happened over the last year and a half and a bit is that we start to see that we want to have work that matters, that mental health is worth talking about, that it's important for me to have a work-life integration, given that I am working from home a lot of the time. So yes, we need to advocate for ourselves. And that's what I want to get into next. Self-advocacy. And really important when it comes to interview skills. It's the action of representing oneself or one's views or interest, which requires, as I've said, knowing yourself, knowing your needs, and knowing how to get what you need, which is generally the harder part because the communication can be a challenge, especially if we've never spoken up before, or it's just like, okay, I'm going to keep my head down and do the work, right? And so who here feels that based on this definition, you are a high self-advocate? Just put a yes in the chat. Just love to know a percentage maybe of who here feels like they're doing this really well. Anything coming in?
There's a lot of somewhat, sometimes.
Thumbs up?
Yeah.
Oh, sometimes, yeah.
Sometimes, yeah.
All right, so my next question then is, what are the main reasons that you may not self-advocate during the interview process? What gets in the way? And again, out loud or in the chat.
I would say the feeling that, that you are vying for a position that they have a lot of options for, so you feel like they're the one in the seat of power.
Yep. Yes. 100%. What else?
I was going to say the fear of being misjudged or just being misunderstood for trying to advocate for your needs.
Yes, that is a scary one. What else? I think I see some
say just having anxiety and like, I guess everyone knows their self-worth, right? Because maybe of like past jobs and stuff like that. And you don't know how to get that across, and then you don't want, and then if you do get that across, you don't want to look either overzealous, if that's possible, in regards to like your salary, you know what I mean? And then it just like, you could feel the energy in the room, or like the way that you guys are talking, once you have that expectation, and they kind of like shut down as soon as that question is answered as to what is your range, or what is your salary expectation.
Right. Which is a horrible question, by the way, but yes,
horrible.
It's there. Yes. Is there anything in the chat as well?
Yeah, there are a lot of stuff in the chat. So someone wrote, don't want to come off as demanding. Another wrote, fear of coming across a certain way.
Yeah.
And then the last comment is, the employer is not actively listening to you, so not giving you enough eye contact during the interview.
Bad habits. These are all very real, and they come down to generally like there's a lack of time, right? We only get so much time to be able to advocate for ourselves. There's fear. There's a few fears mentioned. It feels like, oh, there's so much that's riding on this a lot of the time. How do I get this across? You don't want to come across as too demanding. So there's a lot of perceptions, and how do we manage those perceptions of what other people think? But even sometimes just a lack of clarity, and the interview process and period can be really unfair towards candidates. These are all very real. And I guess what I would say to that is we'll go through a few ways to be able to manage for that. And there's a self-confidence that needs to happen, because these processes are changing. And I'm telling you, in those types of like people perceiving that you are being too demanding is a red flag for the type of manager they will be. 100% will be. So I would be interested in equity at a company like that, that's not valuing questions that matter to you and whether or not this is something that can get you what you need. We'll dive into that a little bit more. We're thinking about, when we're going to these questions, organization fit first and position fit second generally. So we want to be able to prepare. Preparation is the key to self-advocacy. I find that the people that I've coached in, I used to coach people who had been let go from their jobs and were thinking about the next thing for them and how do they prepare for themselves given where the position they were in. And the more that you can prepare and feel confident about what you're about to say, then you can self-advocate even more, because you're not doing a lot of decision fatigue. Like, you're not trying to make decisions about what you're going to say. You're really clear about that. So you want to position yourself as an expert and just use your life, your past experience. Prepare to explain your shortcomings and mention non-resume highlights. These things are very important so that you can feel prepared. If you've gone through a lot of these, you'll be ready for a lot of those questions, and you'll be able to turn it back to the interviewer, which is something that we will cover later. 3 questions that I think are really important to be able to get to some of this work is, what is my dream position? What is the one benefit that I need? And what is my greatest asset? So if you have done, any values work, strengths-based work, knowing what your strengths are, what are the key parts of your personality, knowing what your dream position is, I think that will really help you. And so it is beyond important to prepare and practice so that you can feel confident. And I'm going to give you an opportunity to do that now. So we're going to put you in breakout rooms, and you're going to be in pairs. And you are going to answer one of those questions as a pair. So actually, maybe I'll put it in the chat there. What is my dream position? What is the one benefit that I need? What is my greatest asset? You will get a chance within your pairs to answer whatever question that you want, and you will have, oh, what is the one benefit that I need? So I love working with people, need to work with people. So if you are going to put me in a room by myself without being able to brainstorm, I am not going to be able to do my best work. That's one example. Another example, I am a morning person and I have to pick up my kids at 3:30. So if I have to schedule any meetings at 3:30, can't work. Something that I need, right? So better to get me before noon, and we can talk about that. That doesn't necessarily need to be an interview, but it's just thinking about things, about what will allow me to thrive. What are the things that I need that are non-negotiable? To an extent, everything's negotiable. Does that make sense? I hope some thumbs up. Yes. Awesome. So you're going to have, I believe we'll do 8 minutes plus 60 seconds to close. So you'll have about 4 minutes each way. You do not need to switch. If you want to just talk about the question and talk it back and forth and ask really great questions, find out more about the person that you're with, this is a really great opportunity to do that. However you want to manage the time is fine. You'll find 8 minutes goes by really fast. If you end up answering that first question, go to the next one. Just keep going. Use the time to find out more and take notes as well as the listener of the other person. What you can do is start to listen for, oh, that sounds like this is important to you. Practice your active listening here, because it is something that we're going to go through later and a really important skill for interviews as well. So take one of the questions, answer them. It doesn't matter who and what order. You will have 8 minutes plus 60 seconds to close your conversation. And what I will be looking for when you come back is, what are you now aware of? What are you taking away from that conversation? So I don't need a whole rundown of what you talked about. but just what are you aware of now? Cool. Awesome. Those will not be recorded, for the record. I think we're missing a few.
Yeah, I think they're still in there. The room is going to close in 35 seconds.
Okay,
so
great.
they're
Awesome.
trickling in slowly.
I hope that was eye-opening, helpful, grounding. Use your adjective. Oh, yay. Thumbs up. I love thumbs up. Thank you. Welcome back, y'all. What did you learn? What are you aware of now? And again, out loud, or feel free to share in the chat.
Technical difficulties.
Oh. Yes, Zoom is still Zoom. I hope you got enough time though to talk through some a little bit. Okay, good.
Thank you.
What else? What else is out there? What are you aware of now? What are you taking away from that conversation? Yes, Jonathan.
One thing I learned from Herth is something that I think a lot of people share is the hope that your managers would be not just kind of in that position, but kind of like you were talking about, being people who are personable and people who can really speak one-to-one to and just have a conversation, and someone who's understanding as well.
Absolutely, so important. Yeah, similarities of values with my partner. Was Herth your partner? He said.
Yes, yeah,
Herth was my partner. Fabulous. What else?
Yeah, similar to what Johnny, I heard the previous person that spoke, similar to what they said, like similar values. But I also realized like we both care about like our mental well-being, like anything that allows us to have that peace of mind. So that's why I took away.
Amazing. So important. We spend most of our waking hours at our work. So it's important that they take that seriously. Peter.
Yeah, so I thought that was a really interesting exercise, and something that stuck out to me was kind of the individuality of the responses and the needs of potential kind of people seeking employment. And it just made me think about, not to say that our answers were different, they're actually quite similar, but the fact that there's probably individual needs that everyone has that probably need to be communicated at some point.
Mm-hmm. So important. It's a good place to start, because the more that you can identify what is important for you, one, you'll be able to identify maybe companies that align with those values even before you apply, but they will be able to see how valuable their values are and what does that look like in practice. So values are really great on a wall. They are wonderful words, but what does it look like in practice is really what we want to find out through the process. So let's dive into questions. What are the types of questions that we want to ask when we're going through this process? And thank you so much for participating. Sorry, I want to just, positivity and sincerity go a long way in facilitating conversation. Absolutely. Yes, have these conversations more. Those are 3 really great questions to start with. Talk to your family, talk to your partner, talk to whoever. It can really help you kind of dive into what's important and what do we share here, as well as clarifying what's important to you. All right, let's dive in. More questions. So as I mentioned, organizational, team, and role. Generally, you're going to have two opportunities. So there's an HR screen, usually, when we're going through an interview process, and then you'll go to the hiring manager. If your company has, the company that you're interviewing with has really great process, you may have other people evaluating, so it's not fully biased in how they're hiring or evaluating for culture fit, although I do not love that phrase. What I do like about that process is that they are going through the values and talking about that with potential candidates. So that can be a good process if they've set it up well. You want to make sure that you are preparing in advance. Do not wing interviews. Please do not wing your interviews. Be prepared with stories. Be prepared with, like I had mentioned, talking about your shortcomings. They are going to ask you about them. So prepare about how you're going to talk about it. Talk about results. Talk about even your non-resume stuff that I'd mentioned too as well. There's a lot that you bring to the table, so be prepared for that. All right. Practice, practice, practice. Okay, here we go again. These are all going to be the questions, and I'm going to go from organizational down. I'm happy to share this afterwards too, so you don't have to necessarily write everything down. I'll be happy to share it. Okay, organizational focus. How does your company approach employee growth and development? What is your company's 5-year plan, 10-year plan? What measures has your company taken to improve the work-life balance of your staff? What investments have you made in company culture? And how would you describe the current culture of the company? What challenge is the company facing right now? How are leaders trained and developed? What sets your company apart from others in the industry or region? Now, I want to preface these to say, these answers really will give you insight. So for example, if you are asking, what is your company's 5-year plan? And the person you're talking to doesn't know, I'd say that's a red flag. If you're asking about growth and development and they can't answer the question, I'd be worried about that. It's really about what they have a pulse on in terms of being aligned with the organization. So these questions, they can be asked as I go through these questions. If they're one-offs and they haven't answered any of these through their preamble, some of the answers to the questions, you can ask this when they give you space at the end to be able to ask any questions that you have. As you're going through this, I'd really love to know which one of these stands out for you as something that's important to know throughout the interview process. What would help you in your toolbox? I'm seeing some in the chat, I think. Oh, they're not shared? You can't see it? So can everyone see?
We can see it now, yeah.
Okay, okay. Third one. What measures has your company taken to improve the work-life balance of your staff? Third point, 1 and 3. Yes. In regards to smaller companies, or is it valid? Oh, it's valid for any company. What you want to figure out, what this question tells you, is what's being communicated down the line. It may not be as long as 10 years. It really depends on how far out they're looking. But any manager who has a pulse of the organization knows the challenges that a company is facing, what's coming up in the next 5 years, or what's the biggest thing that they're trying to take on, at least in the next 2 years. And that also tells me that in all hands meetings, in things where they're talking to the organization, that they are actually actively sharing this information, which are things that are really important. Anything else out there? Any questions? Now, when you're looking at these questions, these are all just some offers. When you are thinking about that dream position question, some of your values, you were talking about values in that conversation. You want to align the ones that you want to focus on, because you do not want to come in with a list of 100 questions. You really want to focus on the ones that will help give you the answers about what's important to you in a workplace that will support your growth. So it's important to know where they're investing their money. How much are they planning to improve revenue? How are leaders trained and developed? I think that's a fabulous and important question, because it's really, are they supporting people for the growth that's needed? We are going really fast. One of the biggest challenges that I see in organizations that I work with is that people don't know what to do, and people are being promoted from who are technically great at their jobs, but they do not know how to manage people. So knowing that the organization takes that seriously is super important. Is employee retention an important question to ask? Absolutely, we're going to get there. There's more questions to ask. Absolutely it is. All right, can we move on? Is everyone okay? Good. Okay. Next slide. Team. How and how often is performance evaluated? What led to your team's success? What are your biggest priorities for your department over the coming year? How will your new hire support your ability to reach those goals? What are the roles of other folks in the department, and how large a group is it? What would my interaction with the teammates be like? You really want to know how you are going to be measured. So asking about the team, one, it takes off the like, how do you measure success necessarily, but you're just talking about the team, because it'll give you a sense of how the team is being managed. These are specifically important for interviews with your potential manager. I think some of these also, in terms of how and how often is performance evaluated, can be asked in the HR screen. So you can try to get some of this information beforehand, because they should have a policy across the board, especially if it's an established company, about how often performance reviews are, what does that look like, what's involved, etc. Steal it, take it. I think a really great manager thinks in terms of systems, is seeing how all the parts interconnect. So it's really important to ask about it and to see, are there any overlaps potentially? Any questions sticking out other than the last one? Feeling like some you want to add to your toolbox? Okay, I'll keep going. All right, role. How does this role impact the success of the company? What characteristics would make me most successful in this role? How would you describe an average day in this role? What is a set of things that this new hire will take care of and resolve completely in the next 90 days, such that you will say, thank goodness I hired this person? I personally love that question. What do you see as the highest priorities for your new hire over the next 12 months? What do you see as the thorniest or most daunting challenge for your new hire as they begin the job? How will I be evaluated in this role? What are the principal metrics? Who are the internal and external clients or stakeholders for this role? And what does each of them require from the person in this position? Again, we're asking them to think bigger picture and explain to them the plan. If someone cannot answer, what does the next 90 days look like? That is a red flag. If they cannot answer, how does this role impact the success of the company? Another red flag. I mean, no good answers to any of these questions are red flags, but those are ones that stick out to me. Highest priorities as well. If they give you 10, not a good sign. 3 maximum. Probably 1 to 2 is even better. And then evaluation, obviously, you want to know what success looks like and how they're here. So when you're listening for the answers here, this will tell you exactly how they view success. And it can be really helpful to know their leadership style through this process. Some of the ones that I did not put on here was actually, I thought I did, but it's not here. In relation to what was brought up earlier, how, if you feel bold enough to ask, what, who or what happened in the role before, how come this role was open, can be a really good question. It would really depend on how bold and strong you feel and confident about that question. You can also, if you want to, ask about, can I talk to anybody that can tell me a little bit more about their view of the role? Now, I know a lot of the times this goes really fast, so sometimes it feels like there's not time. But I would hope that managers who are open and transparent would be able to say, oh yeah, and they would give it to you right away that you can contact them that day. Anything sticking out? What feels like one you want to add to your toolbox? Yes, you can ask these questions. I'm going to get to some of the more red flags we want to talk about, but it's so important. I think being able to ask really great questions role models your curiosity, but it also role models that you've been thinking about these answers, right? And so it's not just lip service, it really is, what does success look like and how will I know? Feel empowered. You are also in the seat of power. Yes, you are. This is where you have to spend, so as I mentioned, so many of your waking hours. So it's important that it fits. All right, next one, manager focus, because you can't just say, are you a bad boss? I mean, you could. I do not recommend it. How do you communicate with your team members? How do you prefer to communicate? What are the working hours? What are your expectations around taking work home, staying late, or being reachable after hours, depending? Because obviously if we're in person, then around taking work home is a valid question. Can you please tell me a story that illustrates your management style? How will the arrival of your new hire make your job easier? How will your new hire be trained or learn the ropes? What is your philosophy on performance management? How often do you like to meet with team members? Just asking about their story. When you consider my qualifications, what interests you the most? What concerns you? How often do people get feedback from you? At some point, I would love to transition or grow into a leadership opportunity. Can you give me some information or some insight into your path to leadership? These, you want to keep it in stories for sure. The more stories that they can tell will give you highlights about what is their style. Learning about communication is really important and what that looks like. And feedback. I want to highlight the second last point. So important. What does that look like? Are they investing in giving feedback? What is the feedback for? What does that look like? Anything sticking out other than, are you a bad boss? The first one, yes, and number two. Yes. Asking for stories. Yeah, because then you get them telling you, and then you get to see their style too in terms of stories. Yes, can you please tell me a story that illustrates your management style? Stories, stories, stories. People love to brag. Let them brag. All right. Then these are just general, oh, more in the chat. Yes. Put them in the hot seat. What I can tell you from my experience of being a people leader, if they are not treating this process well, you get your resumes maybe the day of, And so you haven't even had a chance to look through it. So you want to help them, well, one, asking the question about, when you consider my qualifications, what interests you the most, what concerns you, that tells you how much they're paying attention. So really great question. But when you have people tell you stories, it actually makes their job easier, because it's really easy to be able to come into stories. I've got a lot of stories that I can tell you really easily about my management style and what I value at work. Sometimes it's a little bit harder to get into the other stuff, especially if I haven't been prepped properly in my organization. So those can help point to things that are important. Last question is, when you're looking to fill the position, when can I expect to hear back? Always ask the feedback loop. When can I expect to hear back? How will I expect to hear back? All of that, really important that you're following up there, especially if they have not volunteered that information. All right. Listen to what they do not say. Listen for the gaps. When you are asking them about their team, who are they not thanking? Who are they not talking about? When you are asking about team, are they talking about themselves? Really important. Listen to their tone. If they are impatient with the types of questions you're asking, that's a really big red flag. Watch if they are late or unprepared. How long are you waiting? That question, as I mentioned, about what are you excited about and what you see in mine, in my resume and my qualifications, tells you that at least they've been reading. Again, are they uninterested? Do you see them looking away? Or are they too interested? Are they so desperate that they need to fill this role? I would be cautious. And that's to say, because sometimes they're just like, oh, I really like you. I want you to start today. That can be a good sign. I would just be wary, because it's like, if there really is nothing that they're interested in or too interested in, I would be aware of that. See if their values are clear. Most organizations have values on their website. You want to figure out about that. Like, oh, I saw that integrity is really important. How does your organization live integrity? What does your team do? How do you know? Those are really great questions as well. If they cannot answer those questions, chances are the values are not in the organization. It's not something that is shared across the board, or it's just something that they don't care about. So I'd be interested in that. Okay. You want to be able to cultivate these skills when you're answering these questions. These are, in organizations that I work in, these are probably the top 5 that are valued right now. It helps people go fast, because organizations are going fast. It helps people make decisions better. And so we want people to be accountable. Say what you're going to do and then do it. Communicate clearly and directly, which an interview gives you the opportunity to be able to do that. Empathy. How are you is a really great question to ask. Saying thank you for compliments, things like that. And ownership over your role. How do you take ownership? If you have examples in the past where you're taking ownership, really great stories to add into your interview. And resiliency, which is basically, how do you ask for help? Are you the type of person, because they're going to ask you generally, which I don't think is a great question, but like, what are your weaknesses? And the one that I've heard so many times is, I'm a perfectionist. Not a good answer. That scares me as a manager. My management style is, I do not want anybody who's holding on to anything for a really long time without letting me know or asking for help. Resilience is all about, what is my support system around me and how do I actually bring them in so that I can bounce forward faster. These are areas you can cultivate and use actually in the interview process, if you want to keep these top of mind. Active listening is what changes all of this into a conversation. So somebody had asked that before. Oh, sorry. Let's see what's in the chat. I was told to choose an easy to learn hard skill. In terms of what, Jennifer? Oh, for the weakness. Yeah. you just want to highlight how you dealt with it. That's really what they want to know. Right? For me, I think a really great answer to the weakness question is what's getting in the way of you doing your best work? And I know that's going to be a different answer to everybody, but as you can maybe find out, I love vulnerability. Some people don't love that. I really want to hear about it. I'm not a judge of people's weaknesses. I think we focus too much on weaknesses and we actually should be talking about strengths. All right. So active listening, the ability of a listener to thoroughly absorb, understand, and respond and retain what's being said. Courage, the quality shown by someone who decides to do something difficult or dangerous, even though they may be afraid. And curiosity, the desire to learn or know about anything. If you can do these three things, this is what turns an interview into a conversation. So if somebody is talking about, oh, okay, so this role is really important, the person will be overseeing our most important account. So it means that things need to be done on time. The service level agreement of what we're doing is really important. I would tap into that if I was using my active listening, and I'd be like, oh, okay, so you mentioned that this top client is really important. Can you tell me more about what success looks like when we're responding to this client in a timely manner? Could be another way to use the questions that we have outlined just earlier, but using it in a conversational way. So what you want to do is be able to listen to the interviewer and make sure that you're really tapping into those things that they are saying multiple times, but also things that they're highlighting about their answers. That's really important, and things that they're talking about. And that will also give you a sense of what they view as important. I want to highlight courage here because some of you mentioned perception and what it is that we're dealing with in terms of, oh, we're coming across as too demanding. What does that look like? If you were asking about what are your work hours and somebody gets mad at you, that is not a good place to work, or maybe it's not a good manager to work for. I don't necessarily want to say it's the place. You want to be able to be courageous in knowing, and this is a mindset shift, and it may come with just some more experience, that this is a two-way street. You've got to believe that it's two ways, that we're having a discussion, that this person needs me just as much as I need them, that my value is worth something here, that I have something to say, and that I can help, and I can share that in this interview. I would say there's a reckoning right now in terms of leadership where being a leader that's command and control is not something that is valued as much anymore. We're taking a step towards empathy, and we're taking a step towards knowing what is valuable to our people, as you just said, in terms of the conversations that you had about half an hour ago. It's like we all are different. We all need different things. And the more that people are open and transparent, the more that you can ask those questions can actually be a tool for you to understand whether or not this is a really good fit for you. And I would just highly share that the more that you can feel comfortable that this is something that's important, the better off your interviews will be. I know when I started to let that go about what people think of me, then I knew that it really doesn't matter if they say yes or no, that the right opportunity will come where somebody values that I am loud, that somebody values that I talk fast, although I have to learn to talk slower sometimes, that they value that I have opinions. And I do not want to work in a place that doesn't value that, because when you start to diminish your light and what is important to you, then it starts to become a prison where you just feel like you cannot be yourself. And people who do not feel that they can be authentic really means that you're not going to do your best work, you're not going to make good decisions, and you won't be able to add the most value there. So that's what I want to share. Last question I have before we get into big questions: what would help you become more comfortable with shifting your interview into an organic conversation about the job? Yes. Practice, practice, practice. Practice makes better. Not perfect, just better. Confidence comes with practice. Confidence doesn't come with just positive thinking. So the more that you practice, the better. All right, keep them coming, but I'm going to open it up to questions, which I think we have a few minutes for. So I will stop sharing my screen. What questions are out there? If any.
Oh,
I
hi.
have a question. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm going to say thank you so much for the presentation. I really took a lot in the couple minutes that we had. This is something that's actually specific to someone else that I know, a loved one. So basically, they had an interview and the director started asking some certain personal questions. And I just wanted to get a feel as to what kind of personal questions are allowed in the interview. And so this director asked things like, do you drink alcohol, and stuff about like, I guess he made a comment as to how like she was trying to grow up the ladder or something like that. So she just had the interview, and I mean, they haven't heard back, but I just wanted to ask for your opinion on things like that. Like to what extent can they ask some certain personal questions as it relates to a job?
Yeah, so someone who's inappropriate can ask as many bad questions as they want, I guess, if they're not being checked. That is inappropriate. That is an inappropriate question. I don't see how that is relevant unless, I don't know what position or occupation that question would be valid. What I would say is be armed with responses like, can you tell me how that is related to the position that I am currently interviewing for? If somebody challenges that, red flag. Right? There is no job that I know of, even those that used to be like sales where there was heavy going out, heavy drinking, all of that question would be valid or even appropriate. So I would say be armed. That's not really a good way to say it. Be prepared with, be prepared with more like, can you tell me why this is important type of questions.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I believe, was it Jonathan who had a question?
Yes. So the question I had is, what have you found to be some of the most attractive or appealing qualities in candidates that you're interviewing?
Passion, ready to learn. I would hire anybody who is willing to put the work in that shows that they are willing to learn. I don't think there are a lot of skills that can't be learned. So I know not everybody feels that way, but for me, somebody who can demonstrate that they are ready to take on and tackle problems, my favorite type of people to hire.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I'd also say people who've done their research on the company, but have really great questions about the company too. So I'm not expecting you to come with, a whole file about the company, but I think knowing that you have at least looked at the values that we've said or the things that we do, that you know what we do, that I would be interested in, but also just questions about what you're curious about, just shows me that you're able to connect dots. And yeah, that's interesting to me.
My question is, how do you get past the HR screening? So I was just on an interview recently, and like I said, they just, the top questions right now is one, are you vaccinated? Double vaccinated? That's like one of the top. And you can't even get out of it. And so like I did answer the question, but the point being was that everybody in their office, regardless of how small it was, were very concerned about outsiders coming in, which I understand everybody is, right? So that's a number one question. And obviously, they right off the bat, it's the salary question, right? Like your range. So rather than coming up, like he asked me what my salary expectations were, and I said, well, I'm not really comfortable with, telling you exactly like an exact number, but what is your range, right? So I was trying to make it into a conversation, but like you said, the screening process is very cut, like it's cut. Yep. Quick, short, whatever, and then, even though they like your resume, they just need to know your number. They need to know like XYZ, the COVID shot is a number one. And then if you don't pass that, it doesn't matter really what's on your resume.
Yeah, I don't know a lot about the law on that one because it's new, so I can't really comment on the vaccine question. I have a feeling that there's like a legal implication there that we're going to find out at some point. Yeah. In terms of the salary question, one pushback, it's not to say that it'll always work, but one pushback that I found that can help is actually, I thought the HR screen is where we find out what the band is. Can you tell me more about what your expectation is for this? It's not to say that it'll work. I have seen it work. Yeah. But it's like this is a place to get information. So I thought this would be a place where you're going to tell me what the range is.
Okay.
About it.
It's actually good too that it's that that they tell you right off the bat like what it is, so that you don't waste your time. You know what I mean? Like you don't go in there because your salary expectation, what you're making now, your salary expectation, and they come below that. They come in below. Regardless of the fit, you know what I mean? Because regardless of the fit, if the fit is good, I'm not sure if people would go down like $15,000. $20,000.
Yeah, it's up to the person. I would say if you can practice negotiation in addition to practicing your interview skills. Yeah. My first job, one of the ones that I had, I didn't negotiate at all, and it was a painful learning experience for me. At the time, it was fine. It covered everything I needed, so it wasn't about that. Travel and having more vacation was more important to me at that time. But it limits you to your future. So it's really important that you can say that with a straight face and be clear about it, or at least know your number. So even if you don't know the range of there, but like what's comfortable for you, say it out loud.
Right. Oh, okay. So you can do that rather than, okay.
It might be wrong because they didn't give you a band. I would say if you can apply to roles that have it listed, because more organizations are doing that now, it's a really good insight into equitable organizations, ones that already have this is the band for this before you even apply. Right. I would look out for those. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
How would you negotiate in a first job? Well, negotiating generally happens after you said or they've offered you the position. And you really want to think about what the number is in terms of the salary expectations that you're looking for. You want to think about vacation time. You want to think about, especially if you're a parent, what that looks like in terms of their childcare policies and all of that kind of stuff. So think about those things and then talk about it. My husband actually is a fabulous negotiator. I wish I had his strength sometimes. He's negotiated signing bonuses all the time for every single role that he's gotten. There is money. These organizations have money, especially bigger organizations. They've already decided. So if they've asked you to come join them, it will not be an affront, generally, to ask for what you need. Generally. Okay, I'm going to pass it back because we're a little over time, but thank you so much. Thank you for your questions. Feel free to look me up on LinkedIn. I would be happy to continue conversations if you have questions. I think, Valerie, I'm passing it back to you.
Thank you so much, Tara. We actually have one more question if you did want to take it.
Yes.
It's by Peter.
Yeah, benefits.
Do you want me to read it out loud or?
Benefits and raises. So when you're asking about performance, like those questions about performance, they should be talking about what's evaluated, what does that look like? Generally, salary raises are given during those times or is evaluated during those times. So don't be shy to ask about that in the performance types of questions that I gave you there. Benefits, I would just ask, who's your benefits company? What are the things that you're proud of in terms of their benefits program? Is there a way that I could look at it? I wouldn't necessarily do that in the HR screen. The HR screen is really about, like you said, it's fast and it's not really that feeling depending on the HR person. But once you're starting to go down the path, I don't see how any of those questions are bad questions. Benefits make up your salary as well. So it's a valid question.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Tara. Could we all just give a round of applause for the amazing presentation? Yeah.
Thanks, y'all.
That was very relatable. I really like when you spoke about stories and how the questions that we want to ask the employers, we should weave it in a conversational way. And using stories that they speak about, we're able to see highlights from, almost like predicting what the environment would be like. Yeah. Thank you so much. So we're just going to wrap up quickly. And once Valerie shares our screen, we will move ahead. Thank you. And like we mentioned earlier, we will really love to hear your feedback about today's session. This is how we're able to, know what works and also generate new ideas for new events. If you could just take a couple seconds to fill it out. And I'm also sending the link to the chat. And we can take maybe 30 seconds to fill it out. All right. So just a couple more seconds and then we'll move ahead. Yes, we're glad you could all join us today. All right, Valerie next. And now we would like to speak about some of the upcoming events we have at the L.E.A.D organization. So on Monday, November 15th, we'll be having an information session with Empower Canada. How many people here have heard of them? Yeah, see some people, yes, perfect. Yeah, so they're an organization that gives free IT training programs for youth aged 17 to 30. So we'll have the outreach coordinator joining us on that day to speak more about their programs, how to apply. She's going to give tips as well on how to make your application stand out. Like we mentioned, it's happening on Monday, November 15th from 6 to 7 p.m. And all of you here, you'll be able to get the email once the registration link is ready to sign up on. And on Tuesday, November 23rd, we'll be having another wellness retreat with yoga teacher Linda Dawkins. And this is a good way to just reflect, de-stress, as well as just plan for the new year. It's easy to, get caught up in the everyday life and then forget that, we also need to plan and reflect on what the new year is bringing. And that's the goal of this wellness retreat. And it's happening on Tuesday, November 23rd at 7 p.m. Like usual, we'll be sending out the link to register once it's ready. And yes, please stay connected with us on social media. We have an Instagram, Twitter, and our YouTube channel has the old workshops that we've ran in the past for you to catch up on. So we have our old financial literacy workshops and also our other career workshops on there for you to catch up on. And that's it for tonight. Thank you all once again for joining us.